November 2025, Alexandra Magistrate Court, Johannesburg. A hushed courtroom listens as a prosecutor delivers a stark warning about the man in the dock. The applicant is a dangerous criminal. If released on bail, he has a strong motive to evade justice, she reads, noting he's crossed South Africa's borders over 115 times and could flee at any moment. The gray-haired defendant stands calmly, dressed in a tailored jacket, betraying little emotion. This is Katiso, or KT Molefe, a multimillionaire Sandton businessman with an impressive CV in government service, now accused of being a shadowy underworld fixer linked to multiple murders. Moments later, the court denies him bail, deeming him too much of a risk. Katiso, KT Molefe, appears in the Alexandria Magistrate Court in Johannesburg during a 2025 hearing. Once known as a respectable businessman, he now faces charges of murder and organized crime. Just 2 years earlier, Molefe was known in elite circles as a polished entrepreneur, a former National Lottery Board provincial manager turned property and hospitality investor. In Sandton boardrooms and high-end nightclubs, he cultivated an image of success and respectability. Yet today, investigators paint a very different picture. KT Molefe, the alleged hit squad organizer, a man implicated in at least 4 assassinations and suspected of running a tightly managed arsenal of guns for a criminal syndicate. How did a seemingly legitimate businessman become entangled in one of South Africa's most complex crime cartels? The answer, as emerging evidence suggests, lies in Molefe's layered identity. To some, he was simply a savvy businessman with political connections. To others, he was a key node in the so-called Big Five cartel, an underground network that blends business, politics, and violent crime. Court testimony and commission hearings allege that Molefe used his companies to launder money and bribe officials, even while ordering hits on rivals and whistleblowers. In the words of one police general, KT's world straddled 2 different roads, one of boardroom deals and another of buried dockets and hired guns. This opening episode explores those dual roads. First, we trace Molefe's Johannesburg beginnings, where opportunity and risk went hand in hand in a rapidly changing city. Then we follow his evolution from a respectable businessman to alleged fixer for a criminal empire. It's a journey that travels from the bright lights of Sandton to the deadly shadows of Houthing's underworld. A journey now under the spotlight of investigators and the nation.
Katiso Molefe's story starts in Johannesburg, the economic heart of South Africa, during an era of profound change. He was born and raised in Gauteng province as apartheid was drawing to a close, coming of age in a city buzzing with new opportunities and dangers. Details of his early family life remain guarded, but most accounts agree he enjoyed a stable upbringing. Some describe his roots as middle class and supportive, crediting his parents with instilling values of hard work and ambition. Others suggest Molefe's family was quite well off. His father, Jacob, reportedly ran a successful construction and real estate business, giving young Katiso an early taste of the business world. In either telling, Johannesburg's fast-paced transitional environment clearly shaped him. He learned early how to seize opportunities in a dynamic society, watching the old order give way to the new, and positioning himself to benefit. Education proved to be Molefe's launchpad into respectable society. A bright student, he attended good schools in Johannesburg and excelled in economics and business studies. In 1996, he enrolled at the University of Johannesburg and by 2000 had earned a bachelor's degree in economics. He later continued to sharpen his credentials with a master's in development studies from the University of Limpopo in the early 2010s. This solid educational foundation would serve him well. Armed with knowledge of markets and development, Molefe stepped confidently into South Africa's professional world, where a new generation of Black professionals and entrepreneurs were rising. In the 2000s, Molefe began his career in public service, cultivating an image of integrity and competence. His first prominent role was as a provincial manager at the National Lotteries Board, a position in which he oversaw the distribution of lottery grant funds for community projects. This job not only bolstered his reputation as a reliable administrator, but also expanded his network in government and nonprofit circles. Colleagues recall how Molefe's polished demeanor and grasp of bureaucracy made him a natural fit for the role. He handled multi-million rand budgets and public initiatives, ostensibly for the public good, and this respectable stint in the civil service burnished his CV. Molefe handled grants and projects, went profile notes, highlighting the trust placed in him in those years. Yet even as he thrived in legitimate work, Johannesburg's climate of respectability and risk was ever present. The city's post-apartheid boom brought wealth, but also new forms of crime and corruption. Molefe's Madibord tenure showed him both sides of the coin, the official world of tenders and grants, and the whispers of the unofficial world where influence could be bought. If he was ambitious, and by all accounts he was, Molefe would have recognized that power often flowed through back channels as much as through boardrooms. This realization set the stage for his next move. By the late 2000s, Molefe pivoted into the private sector, embarking on an entrepreneurial path that further elevated his public profile. He left the lotteries board and launched ventures in Johannesburg's lucrative real estate and hospitality markets. Sandton, the city's wealthiest district, became his playground. Molefe developed high-end properties and opened luxury hotels and nightclubs catering to the elite. His business timing was impeccable. Johannesburg's property market was booming, and the demand for upscale entertainment venues was on the rise. Soon, KT was rubbing shoulders with celebrity DJs, CEOs, and politicians at swanky rooftop bars and charity galas. He projected the image of a self-made tycoon, but consummate satin businessman. In fact, estimates of his net worth by the mid-2010s ran into the tens of millions of rand. He drove luxury cars, donned tailor-made suits, and was often seen at high-profile events, cultivating connections in both business and government. This period cemented Molefe's aura of respectability. He appeared to embody the success of New South Africa, a black businessman who would leverage education and hard work to join the economic elite. But alongside the glitz lay growing shadows. Johannesburg's nightlife and property sectors, where Molefe made his fortune, have long had a darker underside, from club extortion rackets to security companies with enforcers skirting the law. As Molefe's empire grew, so did murmurs about the company he kept after hours. Risk was never far from respectability in his world. Some of Molefe's upscale clubs reportedly attracted not just partygoers, but gangsters. His real estate deals sometimes intersected with the murky realm of government tenders and procurement fixing. These whispers remained low-key, mere background noise to his public success, until violent events forced him into the open.
By the early 2020s, Katiso Molefe's two worlds, the respectable and the illicit, began to collide in deadly fashion. The first public cracks in his facade came in the form of high-profile murders that sent shockwaves through Johannesburg's entertainment scene. In November 2022, celebrated Amapiano artist Oupa DJ Sumbody Sefoka was gunned down in a drive-by shooting in Woodmaid, Sandton. It was the kind of brazen attack that made headlines nationwide. DJ Sumbody's blue VW Polo was ambushed in the pre-dawn hours of 20 November. Bullets from an AK-47 ripped through the vehicle, killing him and two bodyguards on the spot. The assassination of such a prominent musician immediately raised suspicions of an organized hit. Rumors swirled that it stemmed from an underworld dispute, perhaps linked to nightclub security contracts or unpaid debts, but at first the culprits were unknown. Then evidence led investigators to an unlikely name, Katiso Molefe. Nearly 2 years after the killing, Police forensic tests matched bullet casings from the DJ Sumbody crime scene to a weapon found in Molefe's possession. During a raid on Molefe's Sandhurst mansion in December 2024, officers had seized an AK-47 rifle. Ballistic analysis revealed it was the very gun that fired the fatal rounds into DJ Sumbody's car. Even more startling, the same rifle was linked to a string of other unsolved hits. One was the March 2022 murder of Hector DJ Vintos Buthelezi, another popular DJ who was assassinated in a hail of 27 bullets outside a Soweto nightclub. Dozens of other shootings across Gauteng were tied into this single firearm as well. The pattern was unmistakable. A small arsenal of recycled guns was being used in multiple hits, and one of those guns had ended up at KT Molefe's home. For law enforcement, this was a watershed moment. Molefe was no longer just a person of interest. He was now the alleged linchpin of a contract killing ring. Police began to piece together a narrative. KT Molefe, the respectable businessman, had allegedly been acting as a covert organizer of violent hits on behalf of a wider syndicate. They accused him of recruiting and funding teams of hitmen, supplying them with firearms, and assigning targets as needed. Financial records unearthed by investigators showed unexplained payments from Molefe's accounts to several co-accused individuals, suspected gunmen for hire. Cell phone data and WhatsApp messages presented later in court painted a chilling picture. In the days before DJ Sumbody's murder, Molefe was in close contact with a former police officer named Michael Chili Tau and two alleged hitmen, Musa Kakana and Tiago Mabusela. Shortly after the shooting, those same contacts exchanged messages that, according to prosecutors, aligned with the planning and execution of the hit. One message would later stand out. It was a WhatsApp from Molefe's phone around the time of Sumbody's murder, allegedly telling an associate, "Do not involve me at all." To investigators, this sounded like Molefe distancing himself from a crime in progress. Molefe, in his defense, claimed that line was taken out of context and that he was nowhere near any crime scene. But the digital trail combined with the ballistic forensics was hard to ignore. By late 2024, a portrait was emerging of Molefe as the fixer who handled the dirty work for a powerful criminal network. Another case that cemented this portrait was the murder of Armand Swart, a 30-year-old engineer from Vereeniging. Swart was killed on 17 April 2024, shot dead outside his workplace in what police soon realized was a mistaken identity hit. The real target, Swart's boss, had recently uncovered massive fraud in contracts at the state-owned company Transnet, and that discovery nearly cost him his life. Instead, the assassins got the wrong man, tragically ending Swart's life for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This incident might have been written off as yet another unsolved hit, except that within months, evidence began tying it to Molefe as well. During the December 2024 raid on Molefe's home, police found boxes of documents related to Transnet tenders and a private company called SK Group, hidden in the spare room. Molefe casually claimed those papers belonged to his son, but investigators were immediately suspicious. Why would a Sandton hotel and property mogul possess internal tender documents from Transnet unless he had links to the very fraud Swart's boss was exposing? The picture grew clearer when Molefe's nephew, Lucky Molefe, entered the frame. Lucky worked as a buyer at Transnet Freight Rail, and he was implicated in the same tender corruption that prompted the hit on the whistleblower. In fact, evidence at the ongoing Mudlaunter mission, a national inquiry into the Big Five cartel, later revealed that Lucky Molefe allegedly ordered the hit on Swart's boss, fearing their scheme would be uncovered. Investigators believe KT Molefe coordinated the assassination attempt to protect his nephew and their mutual financial interests. The plan misfired, and an innocent man died, but according to testimony, the conspirators closed ranks.
When police moved to arrest Lucky on the same day they arrested KT, the nephew vanished, and as one witness later testified, the Big Five cartel network helped him from authorities. It was yet another sign of how deeply intertwined Molefe was with organized crime. His own family member was allegedly a central player in a grand corruption scheme, and the cartel to which KT belonged was willing to protect the fugitive at all costs. By mid-2025, what started as isolated murder probes had snowballed into a multifaceted case against Molefe, revealing him as a crucial link between economic crime and violent enforcement. At the Mglanga Commission hearings that year, police generals and intelligence officers openly named Katiso KT Molefe as one of the Big Five cartel's ringleaders. They described a hierarchy in which Kat Maglala, a private security mogul, handled political influence and protection, while KT Molefe managed execution, logistics, and violent enforcement. In other words, Molefe was allegedly the cartel's fixer, the man who made problems disappear by any means necessary. Through his security companies and underworld contacts, he could deploy killers in the night. Through his business fronts, he could funnel money and payoffs. Through his government ties, he could secure sensitive information or tip-offs. It is a stunning illusion for someone who once walked the straight and narrow path of civil service. The final act of Molefe's transition from businessman to accused cartel operative came on 6 December 2024, when law enforcement finally struck. In a coordinated operation at dawn, the Gauteng Organized Crime Unit, together with KwaZulu-Natal's Specialized Political Killings Task Force, PKKT, surrounded his palatial home in Sandhurst. The quiet wealth of the suburb, manicured lawns, and high walls was broken by the arrival of tactical teams. Molefe, reportedly armed at the time, was taken into custody on charges including multiple counts of murder, conspiracy to murder, and possession of unlicensed firearms. Police seized an arsenal of weapons from his property, along with luxury vehicles and a trove of electronic devices. Family members looked on as investigators combed through KT's study and garages, unearthing the incriminating documents and that infamous AK-47 in the backseat of a car. It was a dramatic takedown that made news across the country. After years of operating in the shadows, Katiso Molefe would now have to answer for his double life in open court. The image of KT Molefe stands in contrast to where we began. The Sandton boardroom high flyer has been unmasked as an alleged underworld fixer, and the repercussions are only beginning. In the next part, we will delve deeper into the fallout, the behind-the-scenes power struggles his arrest ignited, the political and police intrigue surrounding the Big Five cartel, and how Molefe's case became a litmus test for South Africa's battle against organized crime. The story of Katiso KT Molefe is far from over, but already it serves as a cautionary tale of how easily the line between legitimate success and criminality can blur, and that how one man's personal empire became entangled with a cartel that terrorized Gauteng.
January 14th, 2024. A convoy of black SUVs rolled quietly through the gates of a private estate north of Pretoria. No sirens, no media, just hushed efficiency under heavy security. This was no ordinary funeral. It was the secretive send-off for Jotham Zanamvula King Mswazi Msibi, a man who for years ruled Pretoria's taxi industry with an iron fist. Under a marquee, power brokers gathered. Former Police Minister Biki Cele stood somberly, hat in hand. Opposition firebrand Julius Malema watched from behind dark glasses. The program eulogized MCB as a visionary who brought order to chaos. But outside, whispers told a darker story. One of an empire built not just on taxi routes, but on violence and illicit trade that extended far beyond the taxi ranks. As the mahogany coffin was lowered into the ground and red roses fell onto it, a heavy tension lingered in the air.
Men in black suits exchanged knowing glances. A kingdom had lost its king, and everyone silently wondered who would inherit the empire that Jotham Mcb built in blood and fear. The answer would soon reveal itself in a Johannesburg courtroom. The applicant is a dangerous criminal with no regard for human life, an officer's voice declared before a panel of magistrates. He listed 4 counts of murder and 4 of conspiracy to murder, warning that the accused had the means to leave the country at any time and a strong motive to flee if granted bail. In fact, the suspect had crossed South Africa's borders 115 times since 2004 and had so pestered authorities to return his passport after a prior bail that investigators feared he was plotting his escape. "I refuse to hand his passport back. He is a flight risk," the officer concluded flatly. The man in the dock that day, the dangerous criminal in question, was 61-year-old Katiso Molefe, KT Molefe. A polished businessman from Sandton's elite circles, now stood accused of being a linchpin in Gauteng's most notorious crime syndicate. Molefe's arrest had come nearly a year earlier, on December 6, 2024, in a dramatic pre-dawn raid at his multi-million rand estate in Sandhurst, Johannesburg. Acting on months of intelligence, a joint team from the Gauteng Organized Crime Unit and KwaZulu-Natal's Political Killings Task Team swept through the mansion's gates. KT was caught armed, allegedly attempting to slip away with a loaded pistol when officers breached the door. In the garages and bedrooms of the opulent home, police seized multiple luxury vehicles and an arsenal of firearms. In one car's back seat, they found a military-grade rifle with magazines of ammunition, a discovery that would become central to the case. Upstairs, investigators rifled through paperwork and electronic devices. In a study, they hid pay dirt, boxes of documents related to lucrative Transnet tenders and the little-known company called SK Group. Papers Molefe hastily claimed belonged to my son. The implication was chilling. Evidence tying a respectable state-owned enterprise to an underground cartel. And it didn't stop there. Investigators learned that KT's own nephew, Lucky Molefe, worked inside Transnet as a buyer, placing a family member at the nexus of procurement for the rail and ports company. It appeared the tentacles of the syndicate reached from Sandton boardrooms into the heart of South Africa's state institutions. As shocking as the Transnet connection was, violence that truly exposed KT Molefe's hand. Among the charges read out in court was the murder of Amapiano music star Oupa DJ Sumbody Sefoka, a case that had baffled the nation for 2 years. A news clip played for the court recounted that November 2022 hit. Police are searching for suspects in a shooting incident that claimed the life of DJ Sumbody. A presenter intoned, describing how the popular DJ was sprayed with bullets from an automatic rifle in a drive-by attack while driving to a gig in Woodmaid. Now, prosecutors allege that KT Molefe had orchestrated that hit, and they had the forensics to back it up. In Molefe's home, police had recovered an AK-47. Ballistics tests proved that very rifle fired the rounds that shredded DJ Sumbody's blue VW Polo on the night of the murder. Even more startling, the same assault rifle was linked to another high-profile slaying, the March 2022 ambush of Hector DJ Buthelezi outside a Soweto nightclub, where masked gunmen in a BMW X3 unleashed over 27 shots, killing the club-owning DJ in cold blood. The laboratory matched Molefe's AK-47 to the dozens of shell casings from that scene as well. And still, there was more, much more. The same firearm was also tied to the assassination of Transnet engineer Armand Swart and to over 24 other violent cases across Gauteng. One gun, countless crimes. Investigators from the KwaZulu-Natal task team later testified that this AK-47 was part of a small, tightly managed arsenal of weapons circulating among Gauteng hitmen. Each gun in the cache bore a unique forensic signature that police experts had been quietly tracing for years. To their alarm, some of these weapons had previously been confiscated by police, yet had mysteriously reappeared in new crime scenes. The implications were disturbing.
Evidence lockers were being raided or records falsified to funnel guns back onto the streets for the next kill. It was a hit squad economy at work, a shadowy marketplace where murder was a service. Firearms were recycled like commodities, and protection from prosecution seemingly could be bought. KT Molefe emerged as a central figure, not because he ever pulled the trigger himself, but because again and again the evidence led back to him. Investigators compiled an array of clues painting Molefe as an orchestrator of assassins. They uncovered call records. Molefe's phone contacts spiked with suspected hitmen before and after T killings. Financial trails. Unexplained payments flowed from KT's accounts to co-accused gunmen around the times of the hits. Encrypted chats. WhatsApp messages from KT's inner circle that uncannily mirrored the planning and timing of known attacks.
All these threads reinforced what ballistics had signaled. Far from an unfortunate association, a pattern emerged. The South African Police Service, SAPS, would later argue that Molefe possessed the motive, the means, and the network to be the linchpin of a murder-for-hire ring. He was, in their words, the coordinator, the man responsible for assigning shooters, supplying weapons, and deciding targets. One veteran detective noted that the recovered gun hadn't just placed KT at one murder scene, it tied him to a pattern of coordinated killings spanning years. Those ballistic matches became the backbone of a broader conspiracy case, one that painted KT Molefe not as an isolated killer, but as a general in a sprawling Gauteng crime syndicate. This syndicate dealt in everything from drug trafficking and cash-in-transit heists to kidnappings and government tender fraud. It was, in effect, organized crime incarnate, and police brass had a name for it: the Big Five Cartel. The unraveling of the Gauteng Big Five Cartel exposed one of the most complex criminal networks South Africa has ever seen. To understand its power, one must understand its structure. In testimony before the Madlanga Commission, a public inquiry into crime and state capture, intelligence officials described the Big Five as a coalition of influential underworld figures coordinating across multiple sectors of crime. They controlled vast markets of illicit business, including drug trafficking, contract killings, kidnappings, cross-border hijackings, and tender rigging in state contracts. At its core, three men formed the cartel's backbone: Katiso KT Molefe, Vusimuzi Kat Matlala, and the late Jotham King Mswazi Msibi. Each came from a different world: corporate security, high-end business, and taxi transport, yet together they forged an alliance of violent crime, deep corruption, and legitimate industry influence. According to investigators, the origin of this web lay with King Mswazi Msibi himself. Decades earlier, Msibi had built a Pretoria-based criminal brotherhood dubbed The Firm, which witnesses described as a multi-layered network that predated the Big Five cartel and became the template and protection for modern organized crime in Gauteng. Msibi was the legacy leader, outwardly a taxi tycoon, but quietly a godfather figure who could unify warring gangs and co-opt police with equal ease. From this foundation, a new generation took the reins. Vusimuzi Kat Madlala, a former private security boss with a talent for politics, emerged as the cartel's strategist and political fixer. Madlala is repeatedly named as one of the Big Five's most connected operatives. During the Madlanga Commission, evidence from his own WhatsApp chats showed Madlala casually messaging senior police officials and business leaders, demonstrating he had the pull to influence investigations and secure protection for the cartel's activities. He was the bridge between the criminal underworld and the institutions of power, ensuring that police, prosecutors, or politicians who were on the payroll stayed on side. If Madlala was the fixer, KT was the enforcer. Described as the cartel's field marshal, KT allegedly handled execution, logistics, and the violent enforcement side of the enterprise. Whereas Madlala worked the phones in political backrooms, KT coordinated the men on the ground, the hitmen, drivers, and gun suppliers who carried out the cartel's deadly orders. The murders of DJ Sumbody and DJ Vintos are emblematic. Those weren't random acts of street crime, but orchestrated hits that investigators say KT arranged from the shadows. Financial records and phone data place Molefe in direct communication with the same police and underworld figures that Madlala courted in his chats. In essence, Msibi, Madlala, and Molefe formed three interlocking layers of a single criminal architecture: legacy leadership, institutional infiltration, and operational violence. Together, they transformed the Big Five cartel into what authorities call one of the most entrenched and dangerous syndicates South Africa has ever seen. Crucially, the cartel did not operate by brute force alone. It was propped up by state complicity at many levels. A bombshell statement by a provincial police commissioner would later confirm what many suspected. Politicians, police officers, and even prosecutors and magistrates were in the cartel's pocket. This syndicate involves, amongst others, politicians currently serving in Parliament, members of the South African Police Service, Metro Police, Correctional Services, prosecutors, the judiciary, and all these are controlled by the cartel, the commissioner testified, laying bare how deep the rot went. The Madlenga Commission hearings provided concrete glimpses of this corruption. In one session, Lieutenant General Shadrach Sibia, at that time a high-ranking police official, was implicated for his cozy relationship with the cartel. Madlala himself recounted that shortly after Msibi's death, Sibia approached Madlala saying, "Since the old man has passed away, you will continue to take care of me," a polite euphemism for continuing the secret cash bribes Msibi used to provide.
Testimony revealed that Sibia had indeed been taken care of. He allegedly helped Madlala secure a $360 million SAPS health services tender, and in return received up to 1 million rand per month in cash kickbacks. Madlala even bragged that he had funneled money into the campaigns of a sitting police minister, using a businessman intermediary to buy influence in the ruling party. Perhaps the most visceral illustration of state collusion came in the form of a grainy surveillance video presented to the commission. In it, an SAPS-issued white BMW pulls up to Katiso's Johannesburg residence on November 27th. Out steps Sergeant Nsholi Bones Nkosi, a low-ranking officer attached to General Sibia's own office. The footage shows Nkosi arriving empty-handed and leaving just minutes later carrying a white paper shopping bag with unknown contents. Investigators pointed out that Nkosi spent under 10 minutes on the property and that the bag appeared light but not empty. He came in to collect something that was already packed and waiting, the commission's evidence leader explained, dryly noting that while they couldn't see inside the bag, their analytical minds suggested it was something not heavy but of value. In other words, likely cash, the latest installment of a monthly payoff. The car Nkosi drove belonged to Sibia's Crime Detection Division, directly linking the general's office to KT's doorstep. This scene, played out on video, crystallized the Big Five's modus operandi. A police mole collecting an envelope from a crime boss, the gears of the cartel greased by bribes in designer shopping bags. Such revelations show how the Big Five cartel thrived in the shadows, blending official power with underworld muscle. It was not simply a gang, it was an enterprise with accountants and assassins, boardrooms and hit squads working in unison. Its products ranged from narcotics to security contracts, and its enforcers for hire operated with impunity thanks to high-placed protectors. By late 2024, however, the House of Cards was quaking. Honest cops and whistleblowers were starting to join the dots. The Political Killings Task Team, or PKTT, an elite unit initially formed to solve political assassinations in KZN, had taken the extraordinary step of infiltrating Gauteng to help target the Big Five syndicate. That decision, as the police commissioner later noted, unmasked the syndicate, but also provoked backlash. The task team members themselves faced threats and career sabotage for daring to investigate where others turned a blind eye. Still, their work was paying off. The arrest of Katiso Molefe in Sandhurst was a breakthrough, signaling that even the untouchables could be touched. The funeral question that hung in the dusty air, who would inherit Msibi's bloody throne, now had an ironic answer. The heir to that empire, KT KT Molefe was in handcuffs, and the true extent of his reign of terror was about to be laid bare. At dawn on April 17, 2024, Armand Swart arrived for work in the industrial town of Vereeniging, unaware he had less than 1 hour to live. Swart, a 43-year-old engineer, parked outside his company's workshop, a contractor for the state logistics giant Transnet, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. In that instant, a figure emerged from between two parked cars and opened fire. Gunshots shattered the quiet, hitting Swart repeatedly. He dropped to the pavement beside his car. Within minutes, the gunman had vanished, and Armand Swart lay dying on the cold concrete, the victim of a hit-style killing. It was brazen and merciless. It was also a mistake. The gunman had killed the wrong man. Police would later conclude that Swart's murder was a case of mistaken identity. The intended target was Swart's boss, a senior manager who shared a similar build and car and who typically arrived at the same time. Only a quirk of fate put Swart in the line of fire instead. The tragedy of this era reverberated far beyond one family's loss. In trying to murder a whistleblower and instead slaying an innocent man, the Big Five cartel unwittingly set in motion its own undoing. To understand why anyone wanted Swart dead, investigators traced the events of the weeks prior. They discovered that the boss, whose identity has been protected for his safety, had stumbled upon serious fraud and tender irregularities at Transnet, the state-owned rail and ports company. Specifically, he uncovered a scheme involving a private entity known as SK Group that was siphoning off Transnet funds through rigged contracts. The fraud was significant enough to alarm those benefiting from it. Internal emails and audit reports pointed to overpriced orders, phantom deliveries, and kickbacks laundered through subcontractors. Swart's boss had raised the alarm through proper channels. He planned to blow the whistle officially. That alarm, however, also alerted the very architects of the scheme, and they reacted with ruthless efficiency. The hit on the boss was ordered as a message and a silencing, typical of how the Big Five cartel protected its financial interests. As one investigator later put it, in Gauteng's underworld, killing a man is often just another business expense.
In this case, the expense was deemed necessary to safeguard a lucrative Transnet scam. The hit squad was dispatched, but they got Armand Swart instead of the boss. Swart had no part in the tender saga beyond working under that manager, yet he paid the ultimate price for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Swart murder immediately drew the attention of the PKTT investigators embedded in Gauteng. Here was a professional-style hit on a Transnet employee, suggesting a nexus of organized crime and state enterprise, exactly the pattern they were mapping. The killers had been audacious, broad daylight, public street, and seemingly unconcerned about leaving witnesses. But they did leave something else: ballistic evidence. Police recovered several cartridges and bullets from the scene. When these were analyzed, the markings on the rounds raised eyebrows in the ballistics lab. They matched evidence from another infamous case that had crossed the analysts' desks: the November 2022 killing of DJ Sumbody. The same make of ammunition, the same unique rifling impressions. It was enough to run a full comparison. The investigators soon confirmed that one of the firearms used to murder Armand Swart was the very same AK-47 that had mowed down DJ Sumbody in Sandton. In fact, it matched multiple unsolved cases. The hit on Swart was no isolated incident. It was part of a continuum of violence linking corporate sabotage to celebrity assassination. Within weeks, evidence from the Swart case guided police to the doorstep of KT Molefe. Surveillance operations and informant tips indicated that the Transnet tender corruption trail did not end with low-level employees. Investigators learned of a familial connection. Lucky Molefe, KT's nephew, worked as a buyer in Transnet's procurement division. Suspicion fell on Lucky as a likely insider who could steer contracts towards shell companies like SK Group in exchange for kickbacks. Financial records later suggested that Lucky had approved or influenced purchase orders benefiting SK Group, implicating him as a linchpin in the fraud. More incriminating was what happened during the raid at KT Molefe's Sandhurst estate on December 6, 2024. When the task force combed through KT's mansion, they discovered detailed Transnet tender documents connected to SK Group, contracts, invoices, memos, essentially a paper trail of the scheme that Swart's boss had been poised to expose. For KT to possess those files in his personal residence was damning. It bridged his legitimate business front to an illicit plot inside a state company. Caught red-handed with confidential Transnet paperwork and an illegal armory, KT could no longer claim to be just an ordinary businessman. The Swart case had pierced the veil, revealing how KT Molefe's corporate empire meshed with his cartel's underworld dealings. On the morning of KT's arrest, Swart's colleagues quietly rejoiced. Though they had lost a friend, it appeared his death might not be in vain. It was yielding answers. At KT's first court appearance, prosecutors charged him formally with the murder of Armand Swart, detailing how it was connected to Swart's whistleblowing on Transnet tender corruption. They also added a slate of other murder charges, including those for DJ Sumbody's assassination and the hit on DJ Vintos, now bolstered by the forensic links established through the Swart investigation. It became clear that the same crew of hitmen was responsible for all three killings: Swart, Sumbody, Vintos, operating at the behest of the Big Five cartel. In a way, Armand Swart's murder case became the connective tissue tying together disparate crimes: a corporate sabotage cover-up, a gangland-style celebrity hit, and a string of unsolved shootings across the province. The evidence seized, guns, documents, phones, provided investigators with a 360-degree view of how KT Molefe's world straddled boardroom corruption and street-level violence. As the case unfolded, more revelations emerged. Police disclosed that after Swart's murder, they had recovered 4 firearms from the various suspects in safe houses, including the AK-47 from KT's home. Ballistic tests on these weapons linked not only DJ Sumbody's and DJ Vintos's murders, but even an attempted assassination of a social media influencer months prior, which had been carried out with the same cache of guns. That attempt on influencer Oupa John had resulted in criminal charges against none other than Kat Madlala, illustrating how deeply entwined Molefe and Madlala's violent enterprises were.
In courtroom hearings and commission testimonies, the narrative became unmistakable. What began with the murder of a modest engineer in Vereeniging had unraveled into a saga of state corruption and underworld enforcement. The assassination of Armand Swart proved to be a pivotal turning point. It laid bare the mechanism by which the Big Five cartel maintained its grip. When bribery failed, bullets would follow. Swart's case provided investigators the hard proof linking KT Molefe's respectable business dealings, like those Transnet tenders, to his clandestine criminal operations, the contract killings. With that proof in hand, law enforcement finally had the means to charge the Big Five's key figures in crimes that had long seemed unsolvable. The murders of DJ Sumbody and DJ Vintos, which had once left South Africa asking who ordered the hit, now had an alleged mastermind's name attached. Katiso KT Molefe would stand accused in those murders, not as the gunman on the scene, but as the puppet master who pulled the strings. The fallout extended beyond criminal charges. Swart's slaying catalyzed a deeper examination of Transnet and other state-owned enterprises, highlighting how whistleblowers faced extreme peril in an environment where doing the right thing could be a death sentence. It underscored the bravery of those who came forward, people like Swart's boss who entered witness protection, and the urgent need to dismantle the cartel collusion that had infiltrated state institutions. At memorials for Swart, colleagues mourned not just a friend, but a symbol, a man who died in the crossfire of the fight against corruption. His story, now public, sent ripples through the government. Parliamentary committees grilled Transnet executives about how an external crime boss obtained internal tender files. National police commanders were asked to explain how evidence floats out of custody and into assassins' hands. The Madlunga Commission's ongoing hearings drew intense interest as they connected the dots between KT Molefe's operations and the broader pattern of criminal capture of the state. Each testimony, from the detectives who tracked the gun to the officials who detailed bribe deliveries, added a piece to the puzzle.
By unmasking KT Molefe's dual life, the Swart investigation did more than solve one murder. It exposed an entire system. A security analyst commenting on the case observed that South Africa's recent underworld trends were laid bare. This is what state capture looks like on the street level. A cartel infiltrates a public entity, and when honest people threaten their scheme, hitmen pull the trigger. Molefe's trial is set to weave all these threads together. In it, prosecutors will argue that the Big Five cartel treated Gauteng as its fiefdom, blending business, politics, and violence into a single enterprise, and that KT Molefe was a driving force in this lethal collusion. The evidence from the Swart case will be front and center, from the paper trail of fraud to the ballistics linking a single AK-47 across a trail of bodies. The camera lingers on two contrasting scenes. One, the quiet tender documents retrieved from KT's study, pages of contracts and kickbacks that nearly went unnoticed, and the other, the harrowing crime scene photos spanning Soweto to Sandton, bullet-riddled cars and grieving families. Between those two images lies the story of Katiso KT Molefe's rise and fall. From Sandton boardrooms to cartel boardrooms, from hiring lobbyists to hiring hitmen, Molefe's journey exemplifies a new breed of criminal kingpin. His fate and the fates of his co-accused, like Kat Madlala, will hinge on whether this mountain of evidence can definitively link boardroom corruption to triggermen on the ground. But one thing is already clear. The Big Five cartel's hit squad economy has been dragged into the light, and its days of operating with impunity are numbered. The blood-stained puzzle pieces, the funeral, the bag of cash, the AK-47, the tender files, the bullet casings, now fit together. South Africa is watching as law enforcement and the justice system attempt to hold these men to account, proving that no one, not even those who once sat in Sandton's gilded offices or Pretoria's halls of power, is beyond the reach of the law.
Late in 2022, two rising stars of South African dance music, DJ Sumbody, Oupa Sefoka, and DJ Vintos, Hector Buthelezi, were brutally gunned down in Gauteng. DJ Sumbody was killed in a Sandton apartment complex in a drive-by ambush, struck by multiple AK-47 rounds. Minutes earlier, masked gunmen attacked DJ Vintos outside a Soweto nightclub, unleashing over 24 bullets from what witnesses described as a high-powered assault rifle. Both men and somebody's bodyguard died instantly. The violence stunned the public, not least because both DJs had become well-known figures, often seen at high-profile events and pictured alongside celebrities. At face value, their murders played out like headline-grabbing contract hits in the criminal underworld. Investigators soon found something equally chilling. Forensic analysis tied both shootings to the same weapon. Ballistics experts testified before the Madlanga Commission that the unique marks on bullet casings from Sumbody's and Vintos' scenes matched a single AK-47 rifle. In other words, the bullets and cartridges recovered at two different crime scenes were fired by the identical firearm. Even more alarmingly, that AK-47 also appears in other high-profile cases. Captain Solomon Modisane, a former political killings task team analyst, told the commission that this very rifle was used not only in the DJ's murders, but also in the killings of businessmen Don Thinliny and Vereeniging engineer Armand Swart. Armand Swart's death in April 2024 had been widely reported as a mistaken identity hit on a Transnet whistleblower. Now it appeared to be connected to the same hit squad that killed Sumbody and Vintos. The forensic experts concluded the evidence tied at least 4 victims to one gun, suggesting a single organized syndicate behind the attacks. Police accounts began to fill out the picture. The AK-47 itself was recovered from Molefe's circle of associates. In one account, it was found in the possession of a Johannesburg detective, Warrant Officer Pule Tau, who had been meeting Molefe shortly before the Swart killing.
Tao and two other alleged hitmen, Musa Kekana and Floyd Mabusela, have since been charged in Swart's murder under Molefe's orders. Criminal investigators say they had been tracking these suspects for months. The linkage of the weapon at scene after scene from a plush Sandton suburb to Soweto club allowed the police to tie Molefe directly to both DJ killings. It emerged that the hitmen had even cased their targets in advance, adding to the conspiracy narrative. Behind the headlines, the motive appears tied to Gauteng's lucrative nightclub economy. Both DJs had built public images entwined with that nightlife, hosting events, moving among affluent crowds, and reportedly sharing in the profits of a city where drugs and protection rackets were commonplace. According to sources close to the probe, both Sumbody and Vintos had fallen into disputes over lucrative drug supply lines and club security arrangements. Deadly territory for any entrepreneur in Gauteng's underworld. Police have described the assassinations as contract killings, motivated by organized crime interests. The fact that these celebrity figures from the club scene were targeted in rapid succession suggests a pattern. Powerful players striking out against rivals. In this context, the reuse of a single AK-47 to kill multiple victims hints at a single hit squad operating with impunity. Meanwhile, KT Molefe's public persona stood in stark contrast to this grim underworld. By all outward appearances, he was a successful Sandton businessman, well-dressed, driving expensive vehicles, and living in a modern home in an upscale Johannesburg suburb. Prior reporting noted that Molefe regularly flaunted a fleet of luxury vehicles and mingled at elite social events. Friends in business and sports circles remember him as a gracious host, even a benefactor. But law enforcement investigators say this polished exterior hid his role as a crime boss. At the Madlenka hearings, former gangster and turned witnesses described Molefe at parties alongside politicians and police generals, all while allegedly ordering executions of rivals. In short, the same man who posed as a tenorpreneur was now accused of orchestrating a wave of violence, and the forensic evidence of that AK-47 ties him squarely to the spree.
After his November 2022 arrest, Molefe's legal team immediately moved for bail. In May 2023, an Alexandra magistrate denied bail, echoing the state's fears. The prosecution warned Molefe had the means and motive to flee. He held foreign passports, had international business interests, and could vanish into global networks if released. The judge agreed, calling him a dangerous flight risk. But the saga took a turn. Less than 2 weeks later, the Johannesburg High Court, led by Judge Brad Wanless, overturned that ruling and set bail at 400,000 rand. Judge Wanless reasoned the state had not demonstrated Molefe was a genuine danger, noting technical missteps by the prosecution. In an instant, a multimillionaire accused of multiple murders was a free man for a brief period on a few 100,000 rand. The remarkable about-face in bail decisions sparked suspicion and ultimately explosive allegations. At the Malanga Commission in October 2025, a police detective only identified as Witness A detailed what had happened behind the scenes. He told commissioners that well before the bail hearing, his informants had already had insider knowledge. They claimed Molefe had arranged to pay 2.5 million rand to secure his release. The detective testified that informers had reported Molefe will get bail even before the hearing took place. As he put it bluntly, he is going to pay 2.5 million rand for him to be granted bail, the officer said, quoting what his sources had told him. In other words, a veritable ransom demand paid not to kidnappers but to the gatekeepers of justice. These claims were made under oath at a public inquiry, though the witness acknowledged he had no paper trail or recordings to prove the payance. Still, his testimony suggested Molefe may have greased palms at the highest levels to loosen the cuffs, an allegation that sends chills through any system purporting to be impartial.
The officials implicated, including the judges and prosecutors, have denied any impropriety. Beyond the bail drama lies the bigger picture of state capture by crime cartels. Molefe is accused of leading a syndicate that penetrated law enforcement, prosecutors, and even tender boards. Investigations found confidential government procurement documents inside his home, hinting at secret deals for Transnet contracts. Video surfaced of his associates meeting with intelligence figures and politicians, and now detectives on the case have become defendants, blurring the line between enforcers and criminals. In Molefe's story, we see threads tying together shady drug networks, corrupt cops, and big business influence. He was both an insider, playing in Sandton boardrooms, and an outlaw, ordering murders. This duality highlights how some crime lords operate as part of the establishment. As this chapter closes, the film calmly lays out what is clear and what remains murky. The proven facts are stark: forensic ballistic bisect select phase orbits to multiple murders. Police analysts have verified that cartridges from the DJ Sumbody and DJ Vintos scenes were fired from the same AK-47 recovered among Molefe's associates. Molefe and his co-accused are formally charged with those killings and others. They cannot walk away from that evidence. Meanwhile, a serving detective told a judicial commission he believed bribes had been paid for Molefe's release, and he even named the sums involved. Under investigation, critical questions still loom. Who ultimately ordered the hits? So far, Molefe has implicated others, for example his nephew, and police continue to probe whether higher-ups in the underworld gave the command. Investigators are also examining whether any officials assisted in covering up evidence. Ballistics experts noted that several crime scene cartridges were damaged or tampered with, preventing even more links from being drawn. The role of suspected accomplices in the police and justice system is far from fully exposed. It is possible more figures will be implicated as this probe expands. What this reveals: the whole case shines a harsh light on South Africa's institutions. It shows how a wealthy businessman can straddle worlds, hobnobbing with CEOs by day and allegedly ordering execution by night, and exploit connections in both. The fact that an accused mass murderer might have simply paid to get bail raises disturbing questions about the judiciary's vulnerability. The involvement of a police detective as an accused hitman speaks to systemic rot. In sum, the Molefe affair underlines how crime networks can seep into the state itself. In the end, we're left with a mixture of concrete proof and unsettling unknowns. On one hand, the forensic and testimonial evidence means Molefe's version of events is on trial. Can he explain away the bullets linked to him? On the other hand, many threads remain untied. Who else is pulling strings? Who protected them, and what offices will ultimately fall as a result? This case, like the darker corners of any power structure, reveals that truth is still being uncovered. What is certain is the lesson it leaves. When crime and business and politics intertwine, the line between CEO and crime lord becomes terrifyingly thin. These revelations do not offer easy answers, but they force society to ask, how safe is our justice system, and how far up the rot did it go? As the credits prepare to roll, that question hangs in the air.